Along the way, we'll have a couple polls and get um, some feedback from you and your experiences. So as far as what we'll go over today, I'll give a quick background on myself and what it is that we'll be discussing a bit about Gen AI applications. What is deterministic AI or making AI deterministic, and how do we uh, see that manifest in different examples in the wild that we can talk about and workshop through here. Um, without further ado, uh, or to introduce myself, but prior roles, I was previously running the security validation team, engineering team at Mandiant and Google Cloud Security. We were focused on breach and attack simulation capabilities, network endpoints, cloud, all of the above, and how to integrate that reliably into organizations' life cycles to get results for mitigating threats that they would see. Prior to that was part of a series of startups that led to an acquisition by Fortinet, building a SASE product, Secure Access Service Edge, that was basically a security in a box as a service kind of product. And prior to that, a risk analytics and cybersecurity anomaly detection product at 4V Systems. And I also dropped in my contact info here, open to emails, questions, and if anybody wants to reach out to connect on LinkedIn, if we haven't already, definitely open to that. All right, well, let's dig in here. So well, what's our goal today? Well, I think out of our discussion here, I'm hoping that we can get an understanding of what is the current scenario as far as vibe coding infrastructure in application to platform engineering and infrastructure in particular to reliable deterministic architectural engineering and changes. How is that possible? And as far as takeaways, basically a clear understanding of how can we leverage AI effectively to do that, and be able to maybe take away and apply some of what we learned using some of the tooling that Gomboc provides in our community edition. All right, so know if Nushi, if we have the poll that we can lay out here, but I have a couple questions I wanted to ask folks to get a sense of, okay, what are the things that you in either individually or in your organizations that you're working in are focused on from an AI standpoint? So are there specific you know projects that you've had in mind, specific outcomes that you've been looking to achieve, and what are the kind of horizon for some of those AI initiatives? It seems like, in recent studies, 80, 90% of people are using Gen AI at some point in their day-to-day work, but it varies how that's manifested itself in production. So I'm curious, where everybody is here in the journey.
Did the polls go live?
Looks like I don't necessarily see those. Doesn't look like there's anything on that front. Maybe give it a test um, on the side here, and I'll keep
Yep.
on with. All right. So one of the topics here, AI productivity. Everybody seems to think that developers should be able to be more efficient, engineers should be able to produce more. And I think there's an inherent tension that's been evident. And just doing some research on this topic, you know, everybody wants to deliver faster, better, but if you don't have sound engineering practices, that can just lead to failure. So in the case of, the recent Dora report, even from Google, speaking with some of the writers there at one of our recent meetups, the case of the haves and have-nots is pretty apparent as far as if you have well-structured, sound organizational practices around engineering, quality, delivery, pipelines, maintenance and management, QA, then AI is great because it helps accelerate those processes and makes them easier to execute. If you don't, then you are basically visiting some choke point along the way that makes it difficult to make progress and actually creates a bottleneck that you then need to resolve. So um, the and I have some of the background research on this. If folks want to discuss this further after, happy to chat through it. But some things I found that AI can decrease or increase deployment frequency, but also ranges increases the change failure rate. So being able to deliver that code faster is basically resulting in bad things happening in production and failures in deployment pipelines because things go unnoticed. Oh, this code looks good, but how do I trust it? And if either people don't know enough to because the cloud is vast, right? There's so many different products, services across, you might be supporting multiple clouds in your environments. There's a lot going on there. So how can I understand everything that's changed and stay on top of it all? It's difficult. But this one study cited that 25% increase in AI adoption was linked to a over 7% decrease in delivery stability. So this is not necessarily making us move faster. Um, the other bit is it actually creates more toil generating code that then must be reviewed. So we're spending a lot more time reviewing AI generated code than actually writing it. And I think the concept is really that if you are generating the code, in some ways you're mortgaging the ability to own and maintain that code in the future if you're not really invested in it and making sure that it's something that you well understand, that is the minimal set of things you need, is just applying the best practices that you expect. All right. So as far as like what is AI good at? And Anushi, let me know if there's the polling works out there.
Sure, just like 5 minutes, I'll just get that done.
Okay. Um, things that AI is good at, great. It can generate a lot of standard, if there's been good examples demonstrated on the public, if you look at, say, the AWS VPC module in Terraform, there's a good dozen examples of how to deploy that correctly that are listed on the Terraform page. GenAI has ingested that, and the base examples and variations, it might be able to help generate that. The thing is that might be in a version that's a few months old, not necessarily a few months to a year even, in the right version of Terraform, in the right version of the module that you're trying to use. Being able to explain complex dependency graphs, error logs, debugging, great, right? But being able to deploy architectures that you don't understand has its own problems in that now you don't really know where to dig and look if you don't own that. And rapidly prototyping new environments also great. That's vibe coding mantra, right? But so being able to set up quick experiments in development, try out new things, fantastic. But even that can have problems. I've seen this in my own personal experience where if developers don't understand what that infrastructure is doing, you can deploy services that are publicly exposed, storing data insecurely, not preventing public access, all that sort of thing. Um, and so that's kind of the state of kind of where do we sit now with what's strong and weak in the current AI game. And I guess in summary, it's, we in the generative AI world right now, we get close enough, which is really pretty risky in production. And what we want is a deterministic outcome from AI. So I want something that's validated, repeatable, and I have confidence in my results. And so that's where what we do at Gomboc comes into play as far as being that uh, agentic kind of co-pilot that drives efficiency that you can trust. And I think the other analogy here is along the lines of I have you know, from generating things that break my pipelines, break things in development environments, we might have moved from click ops into prompt ops. And I had it in the previous slide there, the whole replit example of accidentally deleting a whole bunch of data from a database in production even though an agent was explicitly told not to do that, these are the kinds of guardrails and things we need to protect against. So making sure that we're thinking about deterministic actions, controlled action on behalf and making use of AI in order to make that happen is where we want to be. All right, so what is deterministic AI? What are the pieces of it? And I describe what we do at Gomboc as kind of inverting the paradigm a bit. Instead of just using generative AI to create an outcome straight out of the box, say, okay, I'm going to issue a prompt and get a straight shot correct answer. What we're doing is building a systematic engineering process around the use of AI that makes sure that one, we bring in the relevant data and this comprehension step. We understand the context. We bring in Terraform, CloudFormation, other IAC docs, be able to understand what it is that each language supports and then for the different cloud services, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, what have you, Ali Cloud, we can understand what services are available and how they should be configured. And that establishes kind of the baseline for that plus best practice docs. AWS were architected or Azure and Google Cloud will architected guidelines. CIS and CSA, Cloud Security Alliance, and Center for Internet Security documentation for best practices. All of those form a foundation for understanding what is the right way and best way to do something. The second step is testing. So, which might be a little bit counterintuitive, and I think that's something that, both my co-founder Ian and myself, like in our experience, both on engineering and security side of things, being able to start with, okay, what does good look like? What is a test that will make this succeed or break? Is the starting point really for understanding and moving toward a solution for writing something that works right. So the tests and being able to cover those tests and understand that something works, that's a core part. And then being able to effectively be deterministic, having rule-driven changes. So in our case, we have a language we call ORL, Open Remediation Language, not yet open, but keep an eye on that. And um, basically it lets us audit and fix code all at once. So instead of just writing a policy that checks to see if there's problems and notifies users about it, we have the ability to describe a situation, find exactly where in the code because we've fully comprehended the syntax and semantics of the code to understand where it should be fixed, and then apply a change to that code and to be able to orchestrate that kind of change systematically throughout all the code that you have. And then step four is alignment. So being able to take all those tests and rules and align them to those frameworks that we were comprehending to begin with. So understanding, okay, this relates, to the concept of encryption at rest or auditing and logging, and being able to align those different frameworks, align the rules to those concepts, and to be able to give some understanding of what is the impact of this, what is the risk of this change, all these sorts of things that let us have confidence in the outcome as we're reviewing it. And so from the aspect of building this as a deterministically focused AI system, what we do is we define the problem. We find what is the friction point here. In our case, it takes a lot of effort if you're doing this on your own manually with Gen AI right now to prompt to understand what the context is that you need to provide the agent to do all of the generation of code and to be able to understand how that relates back to all the best practices that you need to put in place, including the ones at my own organization. And then how do I measure success? How do I know that it's doing just the things that I asked for and not more. And how can I prove that the results are effective? And then building all of the prompts and tool chains and tools that are necessary in order to make that happen. This is basically what we've done at Gomboc, is make sure that we have a system that enables us to build and scale and deliver results deterministically. All right, Anushri, any
This, for
status on the?
some reason, I think the polls are not working, but I'll just drop the questions with the options in the chat below.
Okay, great. Um, yeah, and I guess at this point, yeah, we can go to that, and I'll be able to start working through some real world fixes while folks are hopefully enjoying their lunch here.
Yep, we'll just send a DoorDash voucher after the session. I just dropped the poll, the first poll.
Okay, great. And while folks are replying to that, um, what I'll do here is shift where I'm presenting. So just to give an overview of what I'm going to share here, three different real world examples. So one is a Azure Kubernetes service, AKS Quick Start. So this is pretty much straight from their documentation. And it's saying, okay, if I want to get started running with a Kubernetes service in Azure, what are the configurations required? And how does that compare with making this, fully configured, I guess, to make sure that I'm hitting the mark as far as operational readiness and security and these sorts of things. Another example, and we'll walk through after that, is Apache Dolphin Scheduler, just taking a open source product that has deployment scripts built into it. This is a very common Apache project, and they're giving you Terraform, Kubernetes, Packer, other scripting in order to deploy. But is this ready? And how do I know that it's ready? And I think this is one of the big challenges with Gen AI, is that if you don't know the question to ask, how can how can you know or be expected to provide the result, right? So then the last one is kind of our demonstration of public S3 infrastructure and other AWS infrastructure. How can I secure this and make sure that the proper configurations for public access and encryption at rest are being enforced? So I will go ahead and I'm gonna shift what I'm sharing here so that you can see. Just take a second to pull up my IDE window here. All right, hopefully folks are seeing my screen here. And let's get started with the Azure Quick Start. So as you can see, I've basically taken the Azure Quick Start from Microsoft Docs and encoded it here in Terraform, making sure that it's all valid. And I've scanned it with Gomboc in our IDE extension here. So Gomboc, we have an IDE extension, which you can get off the VS Code Marketplace or OpenVSX for use in Cursor. And what we uh, do while you're developing is effectively anytime you scan the code, you are going to see, I'm sorry, anytime you save the code, you're going to allow us to scan it and provide basically near real-time updates So I just saved it. Gomboc just found 23 fixes. Okay, so this is off the bat a different experience than you would see with a generative AI copilot because I don't need to ask a question, wait for it to think, review all the steps that it took, see the results. Instead, I say, all right, there's 23 fixes already applied, and I can review very quickly what they are. So if I want to make sure I disable public network access by default for my Kubernetes cluster, I can go ahead and provide a quick fix, and boom, there it goes. And now that address a couple issues that were applied there in the code, I can make sure that my TLS version is set appropriately. Go ahead and fix that. Yeah, let's go and ensure the minimum TLS version is set. So in both of these cases, I can turn on SSH keys. I can make sure that my configuration for RDS, sorry, AKS is as expected and apply those fixes exactly and proactively there. Um, moving on to our next example with Dolphin Scheduler. Here we have different Terraform code for deploying to AWS. And if I just go in and just modify one of these files, we will actually, and we go in and scan at the scenario level here. So again, Gomboc found 29 fixes. This is something that is readily available for you to go download and set up as a developer, but there's a bunch of things that you might want to take into account, like how am I deploying? What's the tenancy I'm using? Did I enable deletion protection? So the way it's configured is fine for development for my AWS instances for my API for Dolphin Scheduler, but if I'm deploying production, I don't want people just randomly deleting that. So I should enable deletion protection. I should enable, and so I can go and provide that fix like that. And you can see the code change is applied right here. Disable API termination, true. So in the case of all of the RDS and network instances as well. So maybe I want to make sure audit logging is configured and turned on in my RDS instance. So, all right, I've got the exact, now in this case, there's an empty value because I have to specify which CloudWatch logs and where I'm exactly exporting them to. So maybe I save that one for later once I set up that configuration properly. But we give you the exact code change, the exact parameters, the exact place in the code that it needs to be fixed. And in the case of ensuring that encryption at rest is enabled, that's not configured by default here. Also in Dolphin Scheduler, so maybe I want to go in here and ensure encryption at rest is enabled. So now, and some of these are simple flags, some of them are more complex and range across variables and different components of the modules that are being used. But in all cases, Gomboc can give you the exact fixes that are needed in order to achieve and understand, a plain policy result here. Same is true for all of these different components. In a lot of cases, in the case of the database, maybe I don't want it publicly accessible by default, and I want to configure a private link or something like that. That's where Gomboc can come in and say, all right, yeah, let's make sure that we're not publicly accessible because that's really an insecure default. So again, as far as being able to make something ready for production and be able to do that quickly and easily, I want something that's going to give me a quick review of all of what's going on. And just to put a finer point on that as well, I'm going to share here what a pull request view looks like for the Azure Quick Start. Moment here. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do the last example and then circle back to this to highlight that point because that'll just make it easier to do. All right. The final example we have here is this Gomboc AWS demo example. Again, this is also nice, and we can see here, let's also define another Lambda function. I'm going to get rid of the second test table, get rid of that, get a second. And as things are built, I'm getting scans and fixes. And so in this case, maybe I want to apply request tracing. So I'm turning on X-ray for my Lambda functions. The exact example we were talking about before here was encryption at rest on some of our resources. So in the case of DynamoDB, I have specific, uh, I can use a provider managed key, I can use my own custom managed key, to make sure that auditing is turned on, and I can make sure that on-demand capacity is provisioned. All that's set up right away. I can configure that and tweak it as needed in order to make sure it matches my configuration for other variables, and I'm good to go. Now, circling back real quick, and it looks like we have,
There are one or two questions for you, Matt, I think.
yeah, I was going to say, let me pause and let folks ask
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
So, let's see here. Sort of live. So Malik asked, any best practice to stop vibe coding because that's the hardest part we are facing. We can uh, bring a tool, but we need to tighten the controls too. So I think that's a good question because I think there's the vibe coding. One of the things that we're doing with one of our customers is bringing really kind of comprehensive use into the mix. So we had uh, initial period in the first, say, 60 days with them where they were burning down tech debt and just getting a good baseline for a lot of their code. And then they were enforcing guardrails through our CI pipeline, integration and review of code with automated fix generation. So I think I'm showing the IDE plugin right here. I'll show in a second, and maybe might as well show it now since I think it's relevant. The uh, code review aspect of things, um, so that effectively can have guardrails, and we're enabling them to define custom policies that are things like, okay, make sure that you keep all your Docker files up to date, keep the OS up to date in your Docker file. That kind of check, or making sure that you only use certain approved AMI instance IDs. Um, these are things that, make sure that if someone starts to define encryption keys and key rotation, uh, makes use of those resource types in Terraform, that they're using our module, which is the one that's approved basically for use within the product. So I think some of this comes down to what the expected outcomes are as far as being able to enforce the best practice, because the vibe coding might not be the problem per se, it's what's being generated, and does that code, like I've had a bunch of people when we're at HashiConf come up and say, yeah, I've written modules that solve these problems, but then there's Gen AI created code that's generating a whole bunch of new boilerplate that adds into the mix and is creating headaches because now I have to go back and say, all right, no, we need to use this module that we already created over here because that has all the security and cost best practices and all these things. So um, yeah, I think there's a combination of being able to bring some of the better tooling like we're talking about, being able to connect the operations and security with engineering in a meaningful way into the discussion and process, which is something that's kind of happened along the way as we've been engaging with our customers too, and also being able to have the ability to customize what the policies are and translate that not just into a finding that gives somebody else work to do, but gives them a solution. And I think whether that's in the IDE or the build pipeline, that helps people get context for what's right to do without someone else needing to be there, because the basically giving a counteracting support to what Gen AI is doing in forms of generating lots of code quickly. It's giving feedback on that code. All right, let me share. See, that's this. All right, so here's an example of the CI pipeline integration. And I had a minor change in this Azure Quick Start. And then in our scan, we get, all right, here's all of the recommendations that pop up some kind of finding with a certain number of resources and a certain number of observations. And then as we look through the code, I can see what specifically the node, or sorry, the code is that's suggested to be changed, and then why. What's the change to be made? What's the impact of making that change? So is it preventing public internet access? Great. Is it setting up the default node pool block? Okay, we need to modify to include that tag, to include tagging, so we can do asset cataloging and tagging. So all of these things basically is the changes that we were reviewing before, making sure that we have all these best practices turned on, and people can see a reason as to why to do it. All right, moving on to the next question here. Hopefully, I helped address some of that. All right, what kind of prompts are we using under the hood? Will we be able to examine those? Um, I won't be able to share all the prompts specifically. I could share potentially a little bit of our CLI tool that we use for generating tests and rules, but I think we might have that in a follow-up session. So let me take that question to make sure that we can structure some of the presentation on that front. I'd say to what I was talking about before, this is Alora who asked, what kind of prompts is Gomboc using? I'd say the prompts themselves vary quite a bit. And so it's not so much about the single prompt. It's really around the practice of how do you tie together all of the right tools with the right informational context, with the understanding of how to build good tests and then translate that into code. Um, and I think that's, a few of the unique things about what we're doing is being able to generate code in multiple languages, whether it's Terraform, Helm charts, and Kubernetes manifest, Docker files, CloudFormation, being able to create rules that use um, basically language query syntax like S expressions, um, that let you walk a syntax tree for the code and be able to deliver a change at the exact right location. The prompts that we're using to generate those tests make sure that we include all the different types of scenarios so that there's changes made, changes not made, make sure that the property is basically included or omitted, whether there's different variations on how that property might be used. Again, that all is influenced by the context as well that we're giving to it. So I think that's, again, goes to the approach of make sure that you collect and can search, and like we are operating on the right versions of the particular documentation that we're targeting, the particular cloud services that we're using, and then be able to generate tests and rules that match that criteria. All right, Roberto asked, um, what programming language is that? So this is all Terraform. And Constantine asked, this is not really deterministic, is it? More so a really well-informed generation. So that's actually where we are deterministic because at the end of the day, we don't apply generative AI when we're creating the fixes. The rules, the knowledge graph, the knowledge base that we have that is used to create the fix knowledge is already there, and that's why it comes back so quickly. I mean, you saw me live. I save the file, I get back results almost instantly, which is a far different experience than you would see in typical SaaS tools or anything Gen AI related, even because we've built the system so such that you get the outcome right away because we're effectively able to apply a very deterministic search and change in the code and to be able to orchestrate that across the IDE, the CI pipeline, um, our integrations with the source code management system. So happy to discuss that more. Feel free to ask more questions and follow up. But it is a deterministic change. It will be the exact same every single time. And our descriptions of what's changing are generated in advance too, because they're all based on an understanding of what are the test cases, what are the right ways to apply this configuration attribute and so forth. Let's see. Jim Khan asks, have you noticed any fail pattern with traditional LLM generated IAC? And I think there's a few. Um, I think it comes down to one, like being able to prompt the right way. If you're an expert, you might have a better time prompting and getting results and grounding what you might expect to see in the code. But at the end of the day, there's still things that could be added that you might not expect, things that sneak in, I'll say. So it's not so much, and let me think here for a minute on that because I think on it's more failures of omission or addition, I think, and also generating code that yeah, is more insufficient than anything else is what I've seen. All right. And Alora, again here. So this might be controversial, but I'm curious to hear your take on this. Terraform is Terraform still the right tool for IAC, or should we switch to a high-level language like Python or Go for configuring infra, given the breadth of test suites and robust module support? It's an interesting question. I think um, in the research that we've done and the experience I've seen in enterprises, a lot of enterprises are just migrating to using Terraform still. And so just making use of IAC as a best practice is still a transformation that's ongoing. Um, and so I'd say Terraform is still probably the best and gets you, uh, is the easiest for people to pick up and adopt, given all of the examples and tooling around it. That said, I think folks at Pulumi actually gave an example where they were through GenAI creating code kind of like live via voice or text saying what you wanted to deploy. And because Go and Python have much better language model based generation, then they were able to produce those results. I still think that has all kinds of the same trappings as far as the problems that I was describing before. But I think it is an interesting thought as far as, okay, what are Gen AI models good at? And given the training data available, should we reconsider our approach? So I like your thinking. Um, and oh, and you commented also, I would trust high-level AI generated code versus AI Terraform generated code. And I would say that is more true. Although I think the problem with AI generated infrastructure deployment code is that there's so many different ways to generate it. There's a lot of well-established norms and practices in Terraform that if you go to the CDKs or Plumies of the world, then it makes it more of a challenge. And Roberto asked what AI tools being used. So this is the Gomboc AI platform. I should have made that far more explicit. What I'm demonstrating is the use of our product at Gomboc that is a system that integrates with your development environment and your source code management system and scans that environment to provide the fixes that I've been demonstrating here. So this is a system that has basically through the that deterministic AI kind of four-step process there, we've ingested documentation around Terraform schema, CloudFormation schema, Kubernetes, Helm chart, understanding of the language and schema for describing it, and best practices, CIS benchmarks, control frameworks for NIST, AWS for architected standards, all of these things to be able to build a knowledge graph and set of rules that enable us to produce deterministic changes in the code. And I think we had a response from Stephen around AI changes being soon on the horizon. So, I think any other questions before? I think I've given all the examples here. We walked through what things look like as being described in the pipeline. Let me share. Let's see. Are you seeing Nishi, my real world fixes slide in the final?
Yes, I can see the thank you slide.
Okay, great. So really appreciate everyone's participation today. If you have any other questions, feel free to follow up. I'm always open for a good discussion. You will be receiving a recording of the video here. To answer your question, Roberto, yes, we have been recording this whole time, and we will be sending a video to all participants here. We do have a community edition giveaway here, and Laura, we'll strike up a conversation afterwards here. We love to engage with folks. We have our community edition version of the product that basically provides all of the fixes, but isn't as customizable as our enterprise version as far as the policies and whatnot. But all of the goodness is there as far as the ability to scan and fix the code in your development environment. And we're very happy to have folks use it and provide us feedback. So if you go to gomboc.ai/holiday-giveaway, you will be able to either receive yourself a $50 gift card or choose a donation to the charity of your choice. And we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to help you out there and to get feedback and provide follow-up. We also have a public IAC example repository, which, if folks are engaged in this area and interested in collaborating on, it's public, and we're going to be continuously updating it, especially as we have a lot of these examples internally right now, and we'll be turning them more public. But if you have others that you'd like to contribute, we'd be open to that. And I think we already had a bunch of Q&A, but if anyone else has any further questions, please feel free to ask now.
We'll also send the DoorDash gift card in just a couple of minutes to start with the call, and everyone will get the recording also.
Excellent.
I have
Well,
also
again,
dropped the link of the holiday giveaway in the chat below, so everyone can just click on the link, download it, give it a try.
we have another question here. So how do you deal with the challenge of keeping up to date with the various changes? So this is something we basically, at this point, we have a knowledge base of all the different versions that we've encountered in the various languages and modules in the cloud, say. And we check on a nightly basis and keep them up to date. So I think that's, again, because we're specialized in the area of infrastructure as code, we've bounded the problem a bit. It doesn't have to be the whole world of coding that we're concerned with. But we do stay on top of things. And because we've effectively pre-built this model, or continuously build it, I guess I would say, at least every day, that gives us the ability to stay on top of what is current and what are the right, say, new configuration options, things that might be deprecated, being able to make note of that and create rules for migration, all that sort of thing. It's a great question. All right. Well, I think that's all.
Yes. Thank you so much for everyone joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.